You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors known as the Going North podcast, aka GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, we got a wonderful, returning, special, awesome author who's back again, who could probably fit in all three of those G's, because we got the wonderful best-selling author, multiple books, speaker, visionary, who also practices and teaches both animal communication, intuition development, and energy healing, and also provides sacred energy activations and healing transmissions, as well as dormant DNA activations for humans and animals. And what makes it even better and not butter is that she also teaches about Ascension and acts as a guide to awakening light workers, star seeds, and way showers. And this super special, awesome human right here provides transformational, you heard that right folks, transformational experiences for people and animals as she assists them in aligning with their true source so they can live their best lives ever. That's right, the BLE is back. So let's give it up for Miss LAS herself, Miss Lori Ann Spagna. How you doing today, Lori?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me, Dom. I'm so glad to be here with you. Second time.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you're like the top episode of 2019, so I'd be an idiot not to bring you back.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
so
right.
glad.
Yes, it's the lovely Lori followers that probably helped to make it happen.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Yes,
It's the little things in life.
Oh,
Everything that helps and serves, it's all good.
there you go. That's right. And the good news is you've been on this wonderful train of momentum with all the stuff that you've been doing. So my goodness, it's been close to almost 2 years since you've been on the show. Like, what's happened since then?
What's happened since then? Where do we want to go? What do we want to say? Because what direction do we want to take it in? What's happened since then? We could talk about the whole world trajectory. We could start there. We could say that 2020, which thank goodness is completed at this point in linear time. 2020 was the birth of what I call the third wave in Ascension. And anyone who's been working with me or listening or following my work knows that we were talking about that like years and years and years ago, like 10 years ago. We were talking about 2020 is the birth of the third wave. And that is a clear and evident marker we can see. So a lot of people don't necessarily understand what that third wave is or what that means or how we knew that was coming or what it was about. But it was basically the opportunity. When we talk about the third wave of ascension, what we're really talking about is the time when enough light has been light and consciousness, light meaning lightness of being, and also light, literally light, lightness of being and lightness of color. Enough has been like anchored into the physical earthly realm that light basically created a trajectory or an opportunity for the collective, the whole of humanity to begin to wake up. In other words, we reached the 100th monkey effect, which is also to say that we reached critical mass, a critical mass of humanity. Enough people basically came into the light, which means to sort of become conscious, or we could use the word enlightened to some degree, to enough of a degree that we hold enough lightness in our body, in our consciousness, our minds, our emotions, our energy field, that was enough light to catapult the whole of humanity to catapult them into awakening. And that's what we call the third wave. And that happened in the year of 2020. But what that meant was a massive effect on the collective for the main population to begin to witness the difference, the extreme difference between dark and light. And what does that mean? The extreme difference between fear and love. And so during 2020, everyone was being given a massive wake up call to choose fear or love. And that love included a kind of divine knowing or a divine certainty or a divine faith or at the bare minimum, a divine willingness, a willingness to choose love, a willingness to choose. And we could also define it between not just like love and fear, but we could choose the old patterns repeating, like cycles of history, of linear time, to repeat those patterns, or a choice to step into something entirely unknown, which would include being free from fear. And one more extreme aspect of this massive wake up of the third wave would be the opportunity to decide to reclaim power and dominion over our own minds, emotions, and physical state of being. So the old pattern was to give power, consent, and authority to an external authority figure, even if that external authority was someone on the news, some big pharma company, some so-called doctor, or some even vaccine or agenda, or even a virus. Like, that is giving power to something in the external world, thinking and believing that has power over us, versus a new way, which is to reclaim power and sovereignty and authority, to know that nothing can really penetrate or permeate me or anyone if we're not giving our consent or authority to it. So that's the big differentiate. That's the big thing that happened, to answer your question. Is like, that's what's happened, right? That's what's happened since last we spoke. And so now what we have is this third wave of enlightenment, opportunity for enlightenment on earth, is basically beginning to ripple out to affect the masses. And everyone is choosing one way or another how they're going to experience and what they're going to create, but not everybody realizes that they're choosing it and that they're creating it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely makes sense, especially with the wonderful things that you said, especially about the linear time that we're kind of really in, what we're dealing with, and having to make the right decisions.
Yeah. And the other thing that's important is that the difference between the two is all based in, it's not something external at all. All the change happens from within us. And the bridge, I call there a bridge between these two realities, like, because the old reality is really extremely fear-based, afraid to get a virus, afraid of getting a vaccine, afraid of not getting a vaccine, afraid of whatever, big pharma, afraid of losing your money, afraid of losing your life, afraid of losing your loved ones. And I'm not discompassionate to all of that, but to understand how we can see this. And the new reality is really saying, that's not my choice for my life. And I'm going to choose something different. And I'm going to use all of my energy, frequency, vibration, consciousness, wisdom, every resource that I have within my realm of what I can call upon, either from a coach, a healer, an intuitive, a guide, a radio show host, any form of guidance that might come externally, but it's all really from within me. I'm choosing something different, and that will include internal change. Like, these two realities are basically connected by a very strong bridge, but the bridge is getting longer, the gap between the two. So while we're sort of like both overlapping and intersecting in the way we interact, you could be walking down the street and, interacting with someone who's not necessarily in the same bandwidth. In truth, what's happening is you've got like a bridge connecting the two, but the bridge, it's a bridge of consciousness of perspective that's inviting this old reality to make the change. But this frequency bandwidth, think of it like this, it's always been this way, is just this kind of, we could call it like a smooth jazz or just a beautiful frequency of love that does not overlap energetically with this frequency of fear. Sorry, my dog is wanting to come up. She's a puppy, so she's just sometimes not honoring the fact that I'm on a show here, so I just have to like coddle to her a little bit. But so what's most important to understand is that it's almost like, why, think of it like AM and FM. I've said this lots of times before. They're not on the same bandwidth. And so the concept of COVID, for example, or a virus, or being forced to take a vaccine, for example, which could be against your will, all of those things, they exist on a frequency bandwidth we could equate with AM. And the other issue, the other stuff we're talking about, being free from this and liberated from it and choosing a path of love and consciousness and reclaiming sovereignty and liberation, all of that is happening sort of similar in a way to being like on FM. And the two, if they just don't overlap. So if you're really very well anchored on FM, for this example, it's actually impossible to contact. It's actually impossible, really, to contract a virus. It's actually impossible, but this is according to quantum physics and divine law. So for most people, they don't necessarily understand this, especially if they're on AM. They don't understand that there's a frequency bandwidth where they could be 100% immune and impervious to all viruses, and that they could live free from the fear of it as well, because they don't understand. But they still have time to cross the bridge. One of the ways they could cross the bridge is just by being open-minded to listening to a show like this, for example. One of the ways, and it's not a one-time thing. It's a change of the way we live, think, behave, everything. It's a change from within, everything about how we experience our life and the world around us. But you can still change the channel and change the dial. But the thing is, you can't keep going. Eventually, you realize if you want to hang out up here on the FM dial, other than what sort of naturally comes into your field, you can't continue to dip back down into AM. That's why the bridge is getting longer, because the people who are on the so-called FM or new frequency vibe, we're no longer engaging. Less and less we're engaging in things of the old reality. More and more we're saying, I'm just not interested. Just not interested. And one of the best things we do, this is probably basic in a way, but we simply do not watch mainstream news at all. We would never even consent to that. We don't give 5 minutes of our time even to listening to lies or propaganda. That would be harmful and detrimental to ourselves and the world at large to even entertain any of that false news that is on the mainstream media. It is harmful, detrimental propaganda and fear mongering, and it's literally killing people, and we know it. So that's like a perfect example of one thing we would actively change. We wouldn't even believe anymore that somehow it serves us to listen to that, because we know that everything we're meant to know, everything we need to know, the divine and our higher consciousness will make sure we know it. So that's a change in the way we think, perceive, believe, and behave. Make sense?
Oh yeah, of course, with all the magical pennies and nickels, especially with changing our thinking. And you're so right. Like a lot of folks, especially last year, really just had to really turn off the news. Like even folks on my day job at the time was like, we just had to turn off the news because you can't just be looking at that all day, if not at all. Like I've stopped watching the news years ago, and life has benefited so much better.
Yeah. It shouldn't even be called news. It should be called propaganda for big pharma and big bankers. I mean, yeah. Sales propaganda, fear mongering. That's all it is. And there's basically no truth. I've always said the only fake news is on the mainstream TV. So yeah, that's one of the first things. But, for some people that could be very kind of new or sort of like strange to hear that. But for most people, like like you know, just like you're saying, it's like, you know, you kind of already know it. You know, it's not like that new information. You know, it's just about us making the change.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You're definitely right about making that change. And speaking of changes, you've actually moved across the country to Sedona, so you're keeping your frequent driving and flying miles up the up the par right here.
You know, I haven't actually been on a plane. I drove across country. Actually, in January of last year, I started packing everything up and just putting it in storage because I knew I wanted to travel, but I um I didn't actually get on the road until after the whole COVID thing, you know, like a month after that or two, month and a half after that. So I never actually experienced any form of lockdown or any form of, I didn't have any of that kind of experience. I was on the road, I was traveling cross country. A lot of my time I was spending in parks, in nature, in lakes, you know. So I didn't, you know, staying in Airbnbs or, you know, VRBOs or hotels. And yeah, so I got here about 8 months later. And by that point, like Sedona really itself didn't have too much of a lockdown type of experience at all, really. Um, so I personally never experienced it, but I also know that on a personal level, I also know that I created that on purpose. And when I, you know, it's so helpful. It is so helpful for people to understand the everyday basic laws of quantum physics because not only are the laws of quantum physics harmonious with spiritual law, which is divine law, they are fundamentally absolutely true. So they're not lies or propaganda that teach you to be afraid. So the basic laws of quantum physics overall are suggesting that we live in a holographic reality of our creation that is only influenced to the degree that we allow it to be by the external reality. So when we take 100% responsibility for what's going on internally in our mental and emotional energetic state, we are very, very more in sort of dominion. Again, I use that word over what happens in our external reality. So that's what I was doing. And I was just living proof that the stuff is real.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's really great that you got to that point where you can actually create your own reality. Because I've heard your story multiple times, how it really took a lot for you to get to this point where you are now, and to be able to maintain that and sustain that. Heck, even thrive now with
Mm-hmm.
that. So, any advice for those who may be just getting started on that path to hopefully getting, well, really taking back their power and being more responsible for creating the life that they truly want and deserve?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of advice. That's kind of what I do. So, I mean, some of the stuff is really simple, basic. Number one, get out into nature as much as you can. This whole ridiculousness of closing down beaches and parks and nature is the most ridiculous thing. If you feel safer keeping distance from people, fine, but go. Nature is the ultimate healer. Go lay on the earth, allow yourself to receive and breathe in the air. And oxygenation is the most important thing you can do for your body. Just breathing in oxygen, relaxing, laying on the earth. You know, that's called grounding, or it's also called earthing. There's literally science to back that up. Um, really making sure that you make the shift to healthy eating, eliminating all genetically modified foods, which will physically harm the body, and that includes fast food. All fast food has genetically modified food in it. Um, Eliminating fluoride and artificial sweeteners, diet sodas, diets, and eliminating white sugar, which is processed the same way all of the major addictive drugs are. Coke, you know, all that you know, those hallucinogenics like meth, they're all processed the same way white sugar is. And that's why part of why white sugar is so highly addictive. So, like eliminating artificial food, eliminating fluoride from your drinking source, drinking natural pure water, getting tons of nature, moving the body, physically moving the body, not like in the old paradigm way, like fight force, but more like in ways that feel good and right for you, whether it's dance or yoga or Tai Chi or any form of movement that feels good for you. That especially if you can do that in nature, that's wonderful. Those are basics. Eliminating anything. See, we must be the gatekeepers. We are the gatekeepers of our mental and emotional state and our physical bodies and beings. So we must be the gatekeepers. That's another thing. To not allow information in there that is going to create anything in your reality that you don't want. That includes violent television. That includes things like artificial TV, like art, like that form of artificial intelligence television. What is that called?
Oh, the smart TVs.
I'm talking about that kind of technology, but I'm talking about 3D. You put on those
Oh, with the glasses
binoculars.
and everything, the 3D technology, the
Yeah,
glasses.
you're like
Oh, the
playing
virtual reality.
inside virtual reality. Like all that stuff is so bad for the brain, the brain waves, the physical connection between the brain, the heart, the gut, which are your three brain centers. There is scientific evidence and proof actually that there's brain matter in the heart and brain matter in the gut that must be really developed for us to live and continue to thrive. And anything artificial, like even technology, is messing with that. So even all of our technology, our 3D, physical technology, smartphones, telephones, cell phones, wireless, all of that stuff, we have to use it in a way that is really super smart, like making sure that we use different forms of, I would call it protection, radiation protection, like crystals, or certain crystals are really good at that. Disabling all that stuff at sleep time, not letting it be on, using all kinds of, there's certain kinds of protection that we can use. We have to get educated in that, blue blocker glasses so that we're not always looking at these screens and ruining our eyes. And so that's part of what we do too. There's a whole lot of it, not letting anything into our mind or our emotional space means controlling what information comes in and out. In other words, feeding ourselves with mental and emotional information and energy that's healthy for us. A show like this is a great example because people are getting to expand and uplift and up level their consciousness rather than being taught how to be afraid and hunker down and, hide out in fear. That's not healthy for anyone. So those are some examples, but I mean, I could go on, retreats are really good, spiritual retreats, meditation. I mean, if I didn't say that, meditation is really important now because it's where we restore our bodies and beings to homeostasis. We restore the balance within the brain, the heart, the mind, the gut, the awareness, and we reconnect with the divine source of our own inner guidance. And the other thing I'll say, which I haven't even mentioned, but it's a huge part of what I do, is we have to begin to work with our DNA. So that's a whole other topic we can go into and spend some time on if you want. But that's what I would say, because that's the part that, like, what most people don't realize is that COVID testing is definitely a desire of, like big pharma and CIA and stuff to get your DNA. That's not conjecture. They're getting a swab of DNA. And this is because what's known but not acknowledged yet is that our DNA holds the keys for our evolution and for our basic survival. So right now, in that old fear-based paradigm we were talking about, the concept there, the belief systems in there, is that you have these two strands of DNA and you're kind of stuck with it. And in there is, all your problems, basically, like your diabetes is in there, your depression, your alcoholism, your drug addiction, like all the problems of your past and all of the inheritance of your ancestors. And you just, there's nothing you can do about it. And if there's a problem, you have to go to a doctor to either cut it out, surgically remove it, or alter it in some way, or take some kind of big pharmaceutical drug, right? But in this new paradigm, what we know is that, first of all, those two strands can be changed and all the issues there can be resolved. So those first two strands, at least a whole strand of it, is just the stories of the ancestors. You know, the information that was passed down from generation to generation that the ancestors believed, told their children. Like, how many of us, like Dom, have you ever been told, maybe from either your grandmother or grandparent or even a parent, oh, our ancestors had this disease, this is what passed down, this is what's in your genetics, this is what's in your lineage, right? Right.
Oh yeah.
We've all been told that. I mean, I growing up was told, like, my family would be like, we thank God we don't have cancer in our family, but we have diabetes. So like I took on that storyline from my ancestors and had this unconscious belief. Sorry, I was looking at my dog. That sugar had power over me, because that's the belief of someone who has diabetes. Oh, sugar can control you. You can't have sugar, modify your sugar. So I like really believe that sugar had power over me. And I was addicted to sugar until I got into my own unconscious and started working with my DNA to resolve that. And when I did, because I'm a healer, like I know how to do that. I mean, within a month, I dropped 30 pounds because I was able to like overnight say no to sugar because it no longer had power or appeal even. Like, so anyway, that's like the first two strands, right? And in this new paradigm, we also know beyond that, we have at least another 10 strands, which science has validated that we can start coding and activating and awakening. And in those 10 strands, not only do they have the keys to our survival in the post-COVID era, but more than that. So, for example, two very prominent codes in the dormant DNA beyond the first two strands are codes of immunity and imperviousness. Just think about this for a second. Your DNA, every human, has codes of immunity and imperviousness to every virus, to all chemtrails, to everything like radiation, all harmful electronics. But those codes are dormant. And so the thing is like, if somebody in the physical world was trying to discover those codes, they want to look in every human's DNA to see if they could find them. They don't even necessarily know they're there. They just know there's good stuff in there. So what's a great way to get to capture everyone's DNA? Tell them they need to do a test, right? And they start collecting that DNA and storing it up. And those are stored in warehouses, like under various places in the United States and around the world. But that aside, and by the way, there's lots of, governments now purchasing all those DNA testing labs like Ancestry and Me and 123 and Me. Those are all being purchased by the government because they want to know the DNA of every human. But that's not the point. The point is that we have within us these dormant codes of immunity and imperviousness, but they cannot be activated in that old paradigm because they don't vibrate with fear. They're not compatible. They're not awake. You can't really awaken them on the AM bandwidth. You have to somehow become vibrationally compatible, energetically compatible with that FM bandwidth we're referring to as an example. And when we start to identify them in there and we activate them, we start walking around with these codes, knowing. So we don't have to be in fear of getting a virus or anything. Not that we challenge the laws of nature or be disrespectful or disharmonious with the laws of nature, or that we would do anything to harm ourselves or anyone else. We would never do that. It's just an example. Also in this DNA is like all kinds of codes for activating our other dormant potentials. Like, do you know what some of those are, Dom?
I'm drawing a blank here.
I put you on the spot. Like, we all have psychic gifts. We're all psychic. We're all attuned. We all have empathic gifts, gifts of sensitivity, gifts of our intuition, ability to follow our own divine guidance, to restore. I'm not a Bible person, but I do know this quote: "I will restore to ye the years which the locusts have eaten away." What it means is everywhere we've been out of alignment with God or source, everywhere we've kind of given our power away. We may have aged or gotten ill or sick or had relationship problems or financial problems. the codes that are in our dormant DNA help us to resolve all those issues and to rekindle and reawaken our superhuman abilities. We have codes of regeneration in there, the ability to regenerate ourselves. And this includes the potential to regenerate bones, teeth, joints, ligaments, skin tissue. This is not something we have to go to a surgeon for. We have this within ourselves. So codes of immunity, imperviousness, regeneration. We have codes of reversal of aging, which those take a little more time because they can be very entangled with our belief systems around linear time. And they're also sort of related to how we use and apply energy, how we give and receive energy in all its kinds. But all this stuff is in our DNA. Everyone is a healer. So in what I can see in the future, and this isn't that far off, maybe 20, 30 years, maybe longer, depending on how fast we wake up, but we're not going to have sickness and illness in the future. But we'll still, to some degree, be able to witness the potential for that old paradigm to, as the bridge continues to elongate, this bridge I was talking about earlier, it still will get stronger. So other people will still be able to wake up and change, but those who don't, they might not be having these kinds of experiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely kind of does make sense, and it's kind of interesting. So in 20, 30 years, like no more sickness, at least for those who are at least aware, I would imagine.
For the ones who are awakening. So it's important to say, because the ones who aren't awakening could be experiencing something entirely different, just like the same type of thing we had with this COVID, where you had two kind of extremes, people who weren't having that experience at all and people who were. And it's just that right now, the collective, the bulk of humanity was still experiencing it. As time progresses, fewer and fewer people will be having that kind of an experience, because more and more people are going to be kind of crossing this bridge and waking up and restoring, the years which the locusts have eaten away, or reactivating and awakening more of our consciousness. And eventually we're going to, I don't know how long this will take, because I haven't like linear calculated it, but we're going to eventually shift into a society that never gets sick. We don't have to anymore. We'll start to realize, because like as a healer, one thing I know is I pretty much know the root core issue of just about every disease. And even if I don't, it doesn't matter, because of my connection to source when I'm working as a healer for a person or an animal, it's so pure. It's not even necessarily that I have to know the root cause of every disease, because source, creator God, has a solution for every individual. And the solution for every individual, whatever it is, exists at a vibrational frequency bandwidth that for me as a healer, I can access. I can access that frequency bandwidth. I can hold and be completely vibrationally harmonious with that bandwidth. So that frequency bandwidth, the person, whatever their dis-ease is, or the animal, becomes vibrationally compatible with it, because it's the same concept of the light always rises up, that the dark always rises up to the light. The shadow gets healed and resolved. The density, the gravity, the pain or suffering that a person might have trapped in their body, the trauma, the upset, whatever it is that is at the root cause of their dis-ease, that can be cleared, healed, and resolved. And then the person gets restored to their vibrational, or the animal, their vibrational alignment with the source, creator God, which is perfect in pure health and well-being. Now, every person in our DNA has the capacity to heal ourselves and one another, including our animals. So how long do you think it takes for people to wake up and realize this? It takes a big, massive earthly change like COVID to get people to be willing to listen to this kind of conversation. Because I've been talking like this for 10 years, 15 years. And now people are starting to realize it more and more, like, yeah, she's not so crazy. Because also quantum physics, everything I'm saying, quantum physics validates it. So all one has to be is willing to discover it for themselves. This is not conjecture. This isn't faith, although faith certainly helps. It's scientific fact. While some of the things may not be scientifically validated yet, more and more they are being validated by science, more and more. And so that typically does allow the human to, you sort of let go of the need to have faith in a way, even though the faith always really helps, especially with the big jumps and gaps. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially when faith is involved in combination with the appropriate actions, because I can't actually see that in 20, 30 years, because especially in the last few years in particular, a lot of folks have been moving towards more healthy living, trying to do and try different diets to try to help themselves
Mm-hmm.
get better because of, well, some call them Uncle Artie, arthritis, and all this other evil diseases out there. And yeah, so
Yes.
I can definitely see it happening, because the growth is definitely happening. I guess that's why they kind of call it growing pains. Got to go through a certain particular pain point before reaching that real growth.
Yes. Well, also the other thing is, so a huge part of how I like to see, to apply it is from a holistic perspective, changing the diet and eating healthy food of nature, substance from earth that's natural without any genetically modified foods. Or I mean, we really want to make sure that all that artificial stuff from like Monsanto Corp is gone. We realize that Monsanto Corp has all the, they're the company basically that creates all these fake seeds. And of course, Bill Gates has all this farmland now to plant these fake genetically modified seeds in his, like, we can't have that in our bodies. And we have to choose products that say, GMO verified, free from GMO substances. But my point is, we have to change the way we eat. Yes, that is true. Change our diets, change what we drink and the way we drink and what we drink, and move towards all natural and ideally organic food. Because if it's not organic, it's absorbing all those chemicals that are sprayed, and you're eating the food that is absorbed all the harmful chemicals, like the same chemicals that are made by, Dow, Monsanto Corp. They're just poisoning us through the foods little by little. Anyway, and then that breaks down our ability to have immunity in the physical world, like when a massive virus comes about along or something. But that's only one piece of it, you see, because that's just addressing it on the physical level. So holistic is really, we have to address it on the emotional level. We have to address it on the mental plane of existence, like the emotional, how we feel, right? And animals have taught me this. Like, the animals are always saying that they want us to be living joyfully, vibrantly, to play, to enjoy our lives, to participate in a way that just is all about enjoyment. That's why dancing and yoga, like exercise through the body of enjoyment, not just, hardcore, push it till you're in pain kind of workout, is not an appropriate workout. You want to enjoy living, get involved in things that are exciting and interesting to you, because that creates the emotion of joy. Be involved with people who you enjoy, people who feel inspiring to you, uplifting to you, motivating, and where you can also share your excitement with people, collaborative partnerships that feel good, right, and uplifting. That's dealing with things on an emotional and also relationship, interactions and exchanges. And then on the mental plane, we have to really start becoming more conscious of our thoughts, because our thoughts are affecting our emotions, right? If we have a positive, uplifting thought and we believe something positively or optimistically, that's going to affect us emotionally. And that emotional reaction creates a physiological response in the body that's either going to be positively uplifting or harmful and detrimental. And that's why that fear mongering on the news is just toxic. It is toxic for the brain and the emotions and ultimately the body, because we watch that stuff. I mean, it's scary, it's upsetting, and it's not even true. So we have to be holistically healing ourselves on those levels too, paying attention to what our thoughts are and actively working and engaging in working with our own thoughts and our beliefs. What we believe and perceive creates our reality. And if people don't understand this concept, I mean, just there's there is so much quantum science now to back this up. So we have to be responsible for what we think consciously and believe unconsciously, both consciously and unconsciously. Because if we believe that the world is coming to a, hell in a handbasket or whatever, that's going to start to ripple into our effect. If we believe that things are just getting worse, that's going to ripple out and affect us, and our reality will reflect more of that. But if we really believe and know that there is something better happening for humanity, which there is. I mean, the more you get involved in these FM frequency bandwidths, the more you know it. You know it because the world is showing you a totally different and unique reflection to you. You're having a whole other experience that's so much more benevolent and happy and fulfilling and rewarding and joyous and abundant and prosperous at this bandwidth. You know it because your experience is reflecting it to you. This is why we have to become more and more conscious and pay attention to what we think, perceive, believe, and work with that, even in the unconscious. And that is the work that I do with people and animals. And by the way, I even go beyond that, because on the other levels and layers of our consciousness, we have to go beyond that too. We're much more than just our thoughts, beliefs, opinions, judgments, ideas, perspectives, and emotions. We are so much more. We have radiant bodies of light, which we could call that our auric field, but there is light and frequency emanating in, through, and around us that's vibrating. So that's like light bodies and vibrational bodies, all of that. We have to address that stuff too. And it's not hard. In fact, it's so fun. It's so easy, but it's not anything we've been learned, that's been taught to us. It's definitely not in the mainstream schooling system. So we have to look to very alternative and complementary options like this platform. And that's what I do for a living now, because it's so important and it's so helpful and it's so effective. The one thing I would say, it's not a pill. I would never tell someone, do this and, in the morning you'll be healed. That's not typically how it works. It's a way of life. It's a way that we change. And every time we do it, we notice little improvements, sometimes big improvements, and they build upon themselves, and they create their own ripple effect in our own personal lives and then in the world at large. They affect the whole ultimately. Yeah.
That's right, with all the fabulosity indeed. Yeah, you're so right. And a lot of that stuff, that's kind of one of the good things about the internet being as freely available as it is now, because it gives folks the opportunity to explore those things that they really want to. Because, yeah, you're right. A lot of the things, like auric fields and things like that, you're not going to be taught that in school, because the folks who teach that, they aren't even teaching what they're supposed to teach, basic reading and writing sometimes. So, good luck with even higher level stuff that may not be higher level for some people. So it's actually kind of a shame, to be honest. It's kind of like a great reset is needed, one book at a time.
Yes. Well, the schooling system was created from to a large degree the way we were in the 1900s, or even before that, was like this assembly line kind of mentality. And people were taught okay, 1+1 is 2. You have to know how to create 2. You have to be trained to work on this assembly line type of reality that we had back then. And that's just not the reality we live in now. So the schooling system didn't really get updated. And the other thing to sort of understand, and this may be somewhat upsetting, but all of the finances of the world are controlled by private bankers. So those private bankers actually fund the government, right? The government takes out, all the governments of the world get loans from these private financial richest global elite bankers. And those are the same bankers that sort of fund the government and create all of the different committees to sort of create funding that so-called trickle down, this hierarchical, patriarchal system and oligarchical system, really. And this system that is based in sort of domination, that funding goes through into the schooling systems, including, all of the medical institutions. So it's all controlled basically in the sense of what's allowed in the schools and what books will be burned and banned, what teaching's allowed, what's not allowed, and anyone who's ever been a teacher knows you have to follow very strict instructions about what you're allowed to teach and what you're not allowed to teach. And this is true in medical institutions. So it's controlled what's allowed to be taught. And any of this stuff, the way society was basically taught was like through entertainment, this woo-woo stuff, like your aura, your psychic abilities, your ability to heal. It has been a tool that has been used is to kind of make people think it's all airy fairy and woo-woo, to dismiss it, to sort of passively teach people not to trust it. And so, that's how it's taught. People don't realize how real and valid this is. So meanwhile, I mean, people who have had diseases or problems, they go through treatments that are just ridiculously expensive, but their insurance covers it because that's the way that the funding companies just pay themselves back while they force you to go through these treatments that really half the time don't really work because they're not able to resolve the root core issues that people have, because they're not addressing the mental, emotional, energetic, auric, spiritual aspects, the layers and layers of aspects of this stuff. They're not working even on the quantum field of where it exists in the non-physical. And so the people aren't resolved, but the schooling system's not educating people in the proper way because of the same reason. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. It's sort of like we have an old system that's broken and we are creating a new system from kind of the inside out and the ground up. And it's happening in small little communities outside of the mainstream. But the way that we it requires us to sort of cross a bridge of faith and trust to some degree, but also understanding how quantum physics works and how consciousness works in the higher realms. You understand when you do that stuff, you're working in a whole new reality. It breaks through the confines of this old paradigm that's just so boxed in and locked in. It does require us to break through everything we've known and believed and perceived to be true in the past. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's like I said before we got on live, I was like, you've got your own music playing in the background there. Your music of joy is like in the background. You're like listening and sort of like in the joy of it all. That's so awesome.
I have you partly to blame for that.
Oh, thank you. That's good. It's all good.
That's right. Good with all the O's. That's right. More O's than the Cheerios box.
Yeah.
Or maybe an organic Cheerios box. If that's even a possible thing. My goodness. Well, with all of this wonderful knowledge, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on these magical interviews?
Oh, one of my favorite questions I wish people would ask more is like, how can we really help the animals? What do the animals want? What do the animals want us to do or to know? How do the animals want us to help them? And what do they want for us? Because the animals are really sentient and conscious. And I mean, it's amazing how much wisdom animals have to share and how much consciousness they have to share with us. And we really don't typically recognize or realize that they are our teachers and our healers. They know our secrets. They pick up on our thoughts and our emotions. And they're so tuned into us, even from a distance, not just when we're home. We could be, on the other side of the world, and they're picking up because they're so tuned into our frequency and our energy. And that's for animals who are companions, but even animals who, live, in the wild, they are so tuned in. They have so much wisdom and consciousness to share with us. And one of the biggest things I wish that we understood better is, well, number one of the best ways we can help animals, especially for animal lovers, is to completely stop sharing the pain and suffering of animals and instead really focus on the things that we're doing for them and how we're helping them, like the improvements. So, like when somebody creates a bee colony, for example, rather than talk about like all the bees that are dying, talk about how they created that bee colony and what they did and how the bees are thriving and how someone else can do it too, and teach everything that they could do to help the bees, because we know that if bees die on Earth, for example, humanity can't survive. So that's one example. Or rather than sharing, my dog is playing in the background.
Hey, as long
Or
as it
rather
doesn't
than
grab like a weapon or something, I think we're good,
no,
right?
no, we don't have any of those. Found some kind of toy over there. I can't quite see. Oh, she got some kind of toy. But so, like, rather than share about all the pain and suffering that's happening to them, and I'm not saying to be ignorant or blind to it or to deny it. I'm saying that when we share and indulge in pain and suffering, we actually add more pain and suffering. It's the same concept as the news. So we can't deny that it exists or pretend. Like, we can't ignore the fact that animals on farms are being treated horribly. What we can do is promote, like, I only buy, grass fed and grass finished beef, for example. I'm not an animal eater myself. I haven't eaten any. I couldn't personally, if you've ever had a conversation with a cow, they're like a dog. They are of that. They are so bonded. They are that love. But if we have to wean off of it through our consciousness shifting, that's a way that we can help cows, by saying, I will not buy another cow that is processed in a facility in the old paradigm way. That same concept for any animal. Like, that's an example of how, and that's what the animals say, like, help us that way by focusing on and putting all of your energy into the things that are being improved for us and the goodness that is happening for us and how you're helping us and how we're benefiting from that. So that's one of the things the animals say. The other thing I would love to share about what the animals say is that one of their greatest wishes and desires for animal eaters to realize is to wake up to that it is all everything we are on the physical plane of existence. The physical plane is a function of what we believe and perceive. And so everything we believe and perceive, it's none of it is fact. Almost nothing is fact. It's just beliefs, and all beliefs and perceptions, judgments, opinions, they're typically existing in a fourth dimensional realm. That's a non-physical realm, right? I mean, your thoughts exist. They just don't exist in the physical world. They typically, for the most part, they're hanging out in what we call 4D. So what I'm saying with that is that animals wish we could realize that we believe that we need an animal to survive, to eat, but actually that's not absolutely true. That's reptilian programming, right? So reptilian programming, we could call them our ancestors, or we could call a reptilian race or reptilian draconian, whatever our knowing is on that topic area, according to our ancestors and the storylines. The reptilian part of the brain is holding in belief systems that we must eat animals to survive. But in fact, that can also be reprogrammed. And it is a choice, and we all are making choices that are right, good, and appropriate for us. But this is one thing that animals have helped us to realize, that when we're ready to become a more compassionate society as a whole, and to alleviate suffering on the planet for the whole, and to recognize that all beings are sentient beings, that we can start to migrate off of our choice to eat animals by reprogramming our consciousness and restoring the knowings that we can be fully nourished and live healthy, and we don't have to kill another animal to do that. And one other piece, and I'm not advocating, I'm just sharing consciousness so that people can make choices. That's all. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying if we don't know this, we can't make the change. I mean, the only other piece about that is that animals share is that, their will and desire is also to be recognized as sentient beings, because they are. And as we recognize that we become a more compassionate planet and a more compassionate species as a whole. And as we do that, the whole of humanity will benefit. Animals, plants, minerals, Mother Earth, all of our resources, and all beings will prosper in new ways that are just so good, right, positive, and uplifting for all of us. So we're getting to make choices and changes here. So, and there's a lot more I could say about that, but I just wanted to share some of the animals' perspective because they're also wanting to evolve and to be recognized more for the gift that they are to all of us on a whole new frequency. But they also honor our free will choices. We do get to make choices, and they honor our choices just like we do. So we all get to make the choices as it's right for us. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful.
Oh yeah, it definitely makes sense. I forgot which guest had something a little similar conversation to about the animals for those who still eat meat, and I'm a guilty party myself, so I'm not gonna act like I'm holier than thou here. But like with the animals, it's like it, especially being raised on farms that treat them well. Like, won't that psychic energy, that those negative feelings, also transfer to the actual meat on the plate when it gets to that point too, and then in turn really add on to whatever other diseases we have as humans?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is it's exactly what you said. Like, first, the animals don't want you to feel guilty. They're not asking you, like, not that that's what you were saying. You were just using a languaging, when you
Yeah.
said, I'm guilty too. But they're not asking us to feel bad. They don't have any kind of resentment. They're just asking us to grow and evolve and learn, and to make choices that are more benevolent for all. That will make those choices. They honor our choice in the timing we're ready to. So I just want to say they're not advocating for us to feel bad. They're advocating us to grow, for us to grow and expand. Well, my dog is running circles around the house. That's so funny. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but so what I want to say is, yes, you're absolutely right. And this is known, the average person who eats a lot of animal protein or animal meat product is sitting with lots of undigested meat in their gut. And they, like even colonic specialists and practitioners who do colonic healing, they know that humans have like lots of undigested, crap in their digestive system that has to be cleaned out. We also know, I know this from working with the DNA, although I cannot validate this scientifically necessarily, although it might be scientifically known, but that when we eat a dead animal, we actually stimulate and release death hormones in our own body, thereby accelerating our own death process. So that's kind of not really known. So all of these things, we can make these changes. But yeah, if we eat an animal who has taken pain and suffering into the body, then we take their pain and suffering into our body. That creates more pain and suffering. That's all energetics that we're starting to learn about and realize. And that's true. So it then behooves us, at least if we're going to eat animals, to make choices that are more benevolent for the animals, because again, that's a ripple effect that affects all of us. We take something into the body that's more harmonious and has lived a good life while that animal was alive and that was treated kindly and benevolently. Exactly what you said, that energetic affects us, and we take that into our body too. Make sense?
Oh
So
yeah,
yes,
definitely
short
makes
answer is
sense.
Dom. Yes, you are right. Without all the story, yes, you are right. Totally
it's
true.
all it's all good. You probably noticed by now I just let folks go. That's right, to get to be
Mm.
themselves, just be them. And any
Yes.
updates on the magical folks who love to eat fish? Because if I'm not mistaken, you've actually talked to some of the fish, and they're like, "Hey, we just see each other, so it's all good. We be alright."
Oh my God, I can't believe you remember that. And it's so funny because I was talking to someone last night, and they are the one sort of species of animal that is what I have heard. Like a fish in the sea. I'll never forget, like this one time, it's happened more than once, but the first time I remember, I was on the dock of a dock looking down in the water, and there were all these, I was living in, in Florida, and there's all these fish like very close to the surface, and it's very easy to communicate with them for an animal communicator. And I was like, hey, what's it like living under the water? And they're like, hey, what's it like living up there above the water? Like they have that concept. It's not like they don't have, it's not like that when people say animals aren't like conscious beings or that they don't like their brains don't work the same way as ours, but they have consciousness and they have awareness. So even that conversation was they understood spatiality, like we're below, you're above, like the answer came back in a conscious way, like, well, but it also came back in sort of this way, like, why are you asking me? What's the big deal? Like, you're there, we're here. And fish are like that. So when I have asked fish, like, how do you feel about being eaten? They're like, well, we eat each other. So that was the only animal I ever communicated with that sort of didn't have, that's their unique perspective. But at the same time, like anyone who's been a fisherman, if you've ever fished, like, I learned this from a friend, he was talking about how when he would go on fisherman boats, if you fish like the mahi, one fish gets caught and they won't abandon their other fish. So the fishermen know they can get a whole family by just catching one. It's so sad in a way, because I mean, not to judge it and not to bring the sadness into it, but it's like these animals are conscious. They're not just uncaring animals. But that was an interesting perspective, like, because as me just being an inquiry and wonder, when I asked fish, like, how do you feel about being eaten? That was their response, like, yeah, we eat each other, And that was fascinating to me. Like, I wouldn't have expected that. But if you ask a cow, how do you feel about being eaten? A cow says, please just be kind to us. Stop taking our babies. Stop taking our babies from us. Stop sticking us in horrible conditions. If you're going to eat us after we die, okay, but just treat us well. Just stop being so heartless. And cows have tried everything to teach us. Like, from a cow's perspective, they believe themselves to be the best mothers on the planet. That's why they give milk. They give life through their milk. And they don't have any, like, human, if you ever think about how a human mother can pass her pain and suffering on, or her trauma or her fear or her worry or whatever, and we have to heal the wounds of our ancestors, cows don't think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as fabulous mothers. So they don't want their children or their babies being taken from them. That is just like the whole calf thing has to go from their perspective. And I think so too. That's just inhumane treatment of a living being. If you ask a pig, I mean, cows have said, even we'll take mad cow disease. We'll self-sacrifice to get people to stop eating us. That was the whole mad cow disease thing. From a cow's perspective, they were willing to self-sacrifice to try to get people to stop eating their babies. When that didn't work, they started, through like the animal communication I was doing, they started trying to teach and help people to learn self-love. Now that's what they're trying to do through their communication, is to teach us how to love ourselves better. Because it's my dog just running everywhere. Let me get her. She's running so much. The cows, they feel like if we learn how to love ourselves better. This dog is so funny. She's just ready for playtime. That we won't be as harmful and hurtful to others. And pigs are like, do not eat me no matter what. I will carry they have a gene in them that they are consciously releasing. That's like, it's just a toxin. That's why it's literally carcinogen to eat bacon. They carry a gene it's a grudge gene, but it only gets released if you eat it. So it's that energy can create cancer. And it's because they're unwilling. They're literally unwilling to be eaten. It's against their free will, but they understand that they're teaching humans to start honoring the free will of others. And we don't understand that on Earth, which, by the way, I mean, the COVID's a great example of how we're learning to honor the free will choices of others. Do you choose to wear a mask? Do you not choose to wear? Do you choose to act like you have to honor the free will of others? Can't take away someone's free will. You can't demand that someone does something. Again, that's against the laws of God, because there is a law of free will. We have a choice, and we have to be given choice.
Oh yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, I realize I went off the charts on that a little. I'm not here to upset people. I hope that people will hear it with an open mind and be willing to consider these things and then make choices for yourself what's right and explore for yourself what's right, because I'm just sharing consciousness from the perspectives of what I've learned from the, in particular about this, from the animals, to help others to expand their consciousness. And that's how we expand consciousness. We share perspectives, and then we open-mindedly consider and evaluate and be willing to learn and grow, because that is what evolution is. And if anything, to bring this whole conversation full circle, we are in a massive period of time with a massive evolutionary jump. And whenever we make massive evolutionary jumps, we have to expand our consciousness. That's what happens for us to evolve. So yeah, there it is, Dom.
well, glad I stopped eating bacon over a decade ago.
Yeah, good for you. Your body will be healthier for it, and you'll have more longevity.
Oh yeah, that's right. I get to be milk chocolate a lot longer. Hooray! That's right.
And the pigs will also thank you. The pigs thank you.
Oh yeah, that's right. They can continue to clean the earth.
We have a big cleanup job ahead of us. That is not changing. We have a lot of cleanup work to do on planet Earth, but that will become more and more obvious to us once we've kind of resolved our death issues, our fear of death issues that were highlighted during the COVID experience, because we have to resolve those issues and ultimately realize they're really, I mean, we can sort of start to complete with this, is that there is a physical death as we know it right now. That does exist and that is real, but the eternal presence of who we are, the eternal aspect of our consciousness, that's, I mean, even quantum physics validates that too. The consciousness, the energy changes, but the consciousness continues. The awareness of oneself as an individuation of all that is, that continues. The awareness of oneself as a being of existence, as an existing individuality or as an existing consciousness, that is eternal. So we may drop our bodies, but we continue. So, and that's true for animals too.
Oh yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Didn't have to even ask if it makes sense that time.
Mm-hmm. And it's good to know. I mean, it does help to know when we're dealing with issues related to the death and dying process. It helps us to, I mean, I lost my animal companion, transitioned last year, and that
Oh,
was a painful experience. Now I have this new little puppy, but it's painful, but it definitely helps to know that the relationship with our loved ones can continue after they cross. Like I still have relationship with, and my whole story of my past was that my brother transitioned, and that's where my gift started to come online, because he was like waking me up. And I developed a better relationship with my brother after he transitioned than I had before he was, when he was in physical body. And we all can have that, so it's helpful, to know that it helps. So not
yeah.
that we don't miss our loved ones. And I know the whole idea of longevity and health and living well is to be happy and live the best, highest and best quality life we can, contribute to the world and to ourselves, and to, enjoy our lives and participate wholly, fully, and completely. But knowing that the consciousness of who we are continues and our loved ones continues is really helpful, especially during times like what we had this past year. Don't you think?
Yes, indeed. Definitely could say that again. And heck, that is actually the perfect transition to the special question for the returning guests. So, you're called to give the final keynote address of your life. You get a good 90 minutes, and your entire audience is all 8 billion people on Earth. And this will be recorded too and played for generations to come. What would the main message of that speech be, and what would the main points of that message entail?
The main points of that speech would be: you are an eternal being, part of an aspect of one divine source. That one divine source is eternal, ever present, omnipotent awareness, completely, wholly, and fully conscious of you as an individual and each and every one of us and all that is, all that ever was, and all that ever will be. And that consciousness that we are each part of, an aspect of, that is eternal, is a consciousness that vibrates in harmony with the energy of love, peace, and joy, and has every solution to everything that has all of our resource, unlimited resource on every level and layer of whatever it is that we need. And every solution exists there as we unify with that in our consciousness and in our awareness. And that is available to everyone on the earth, everyone. And that frequency is love, but it is also omnipresent, omnipotent wisdom, omnipresent, omnipotent consciousness. It's eternal and it exists and it is within us. It's not some false sky god, some Santa Claus in the sky. It is within us, and yes, it is everywhere. Outside of us, we are actually it witnessing us, the witness, the awareness of it. And so that's what I would say. And if you knew that was you and you were it, and you could become vibrationally compatible with it, which you can, your whole reality would shift. For the whole of planet Earth would heal and resolve everything in a matter of moments. Everything else is changeable. Everything. That's what I would say.
Woo! And mic drop, baby. That's right. Yes, indeed.
Mic drop.
That's right. Luminous Lori strikes again, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So for those who enjoyed just probably 0.0001% of all that you do in this one past hour of Lori goodness and want to take and partake in more of your content, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you and learn more?
Well, the best way is through the website. My website is my name, Lori Spagna, LORISPAGNA.com, LoriSpagna.com. And they can get some great free gifts too. Like they can learn about the DNA, like why we activate it, what it is, how to activate it. They get a free class and a free activation at LoriSpagna.com/free gifts/DNA. And if they're animal lovers and they want to know how they can help animals more, how they can serve and support animals and learn about animal telepathy and energy, they can get some great free gifts there at LoriSpagna.com/free gifts/animals. There's also something there that will help them open up their third eye and their psychic intuitive gifts. And then also for people who want to learn more about like what we talked about with the, changing your vibration, your frequency using crystals, you can get a whole class and content on how to do that and what crystals to use to protect you against technology, harmful technology, etc. You can go to LoriSpagna.com/free gifts/crystals. There's a great ebook and a class there. You'll love it. It's fun and it's nice. It's easy and very rich in content. And then finally, there's tons of stuff on YouTube, free stuff, free videos, all about, all of this and more at my YouTube channel, Lori Spagna on YouTube. And that's, once again, I'll just spell it LORISPAGNA. Yeah. Tom, thanks for having me. I love watching you just, bopping. Because the last interview we did, it was just audio. And I didn't get to see you.
Oh, yeah. I had my old laptop back then. Good times. Busted webcam and all. Now I have a nice laptop that's getting close to a year old now. So, yeah.
Now we're evolved. We get to use video.
That's right. It's like the cavemen. We have found fire. We have found fire.
I just think you're so fun. You're just jiving with it. It's like all good.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's all good indeed. So there you have it, folks. Head over to Lori's lovely website. Check out her YouTube page indeed, especially if you're seeing the video version of this episode, because I was telling her earlier that her DNA stuff is definitely working because she lost extra weight that she probably didn't even need to lose. If you look at it, if you're a regular person, and the fact that she looks younger than what she did, freaking my goodness, probably 12 years ago. If you look at some of her activating DNA videos on her web channel, so definitely check out all the stuff that she has to offer. It'll definitely be good for you. I'll also put it all in the show notes as well if you're checking us out on the website or on the YouTube channel indeed. So before we close up the recording, any parting words, Lori?
I just want to say thank you. And I just want to say one other thing with because we didn't really talk too much about the channeling I do, but one thing that's channeled in over and over again is through, when I do channeling from the non-physical guides and masters and beings in the non-physical, is that when one being on earth is uplifted, the whole of humanity is uplifted. So when the most prevalent question I get is, how do I help? How do I help? How do I help animals? How do I help other humans? And just by lifting your own vibration, just by elevating your own consciousness, you're helping the whole of humanity. It's amazing. When one being is elevated, the whole of humanity is elevated. And conversely, it's true that when one being is reduced or has to suffer needlessly or has pain or suffering needlessly, the whole of humanity can be, brought down by that. So it's important, just even kindness, being kind right now. Being kind can uplift someone, being considerate, being thoughtful. Some of the most basic things can help the world right now in a huge way. Smiling. I mean, it's important to be able to smile and to share kindness on earth at a time like this when there are so many people who are still, really suffering. And that's what I'd like to leave everyone with, is just, that's the last thing, is just be mindful how you can help. You can help by uplifting your own frequency and vibration and sharing kindness and being of benevolence, choosing every day to be that. So, yeah. And other than that, I just want to say thank you.
How's it going, my friend? I'm glad you made it to the end. That shows that you really enjoyed what you heard and you are an uncommon finisher. Thanks for giving this show a listen. If you really want to help out the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that you care about or someone that needs to hear this message, because we want to spread this podcast around like butter on bread, if that's your type of thing. And if it's not your type of thing, still spread it around anyway, because good stuff needs to be shared with good people like yourself.